Present day to all, this is Mr. Criminology, and today I'll be discussing the parts and contents of the criminological research, specifically the proposal portion of the study. Let's begin with defining the different terms and exploring different parts. So the first part is, of course, the background of the study. Of course, by this time, you already have your title. Your title is the main problem. The title should be answering the what, who, and where. It must be clear and concise. And of course, your study must be smart. It must be specific or simple. It must be measurable. It must be attainable. It must be realistic. And it must be time bound. If you already have your title, your main problem, the next thing that you need to do is for you to write your background of the study. By this, the back of the study gives an overview of what the research is all about. By merely reading this, your reader knows already ano ang pinag-aaralan mo. This part of the research study presents a situational analysis of the topic at hand, particularly giving clear the global, national, regional, and local scenarios. Of course, when we are studying, there is a problem. Therefore, you must cite, meron ba talagang problema globally? Pag global, usually, the UN, the Interpol, the other nations, no, the continents, pwede yan, no? And the national, the Philippine setting, is there really a problem in our country? And then the regional, until ma-reach niya ang local setting kung saan ka nag-i-study. Remember, the research must be, there is a problem that we need to find for solution. Kaya dito pala makita natin kung talagang mayroong impact ang ating study. Issues, contradictory results, reactions, as well as controversies about the chosen topic should be discussed, fully providing scientific reasons for the need to undertake a research on the topic. Of course, by this, if there is really a problem, therefore it is an issue at hand. Therefore, if it is an issue, there are pros and cons, or there are contradictory results from the different concerned agency, nation, departments, or even people. Therefore, there are also reactions toward this controversy or problem at hand. And as a researcher, you must cite them, or you must write them down, and you can provide also scientific reasons why you are undertaking this research. Of course, citation is needed as part of this thesis or dissertation. That's why in here we can further strengthen that there is really a need for this study. In addition, the discussion should be done very thoroughly, indicating the rationale and the objectives of the research study. Of course, there is a problem, then what is our objective? We must establish our objective in the research portion, which is the background of the study. This portion, we must be answer the question why, in order to fully establish the need for this study. Remember, if it is a proposal, we are convincing our panel that there is really a problem, and we must tell them why we need to pursue, why they need to approve this study. It is the portion also of the paper that the review of related literature has to be mentioned. The literature shall strengthen the need to conduct the study. Therefore, class, it is already established that even other researchers are also into this kind of topic. The literatures will prove and will strengthen your previous arguments and previous write-ups concerning the background and the arguments and the issues concerning the problem that you are studying. So literatures will help you strengthen them and convince that there is really a need to conduct the study. Of course, for us to find literatures, we must consider what we call recency. The ideal years are that the past 10 years literatures are the best to use. Includes journals, can use thesis, dissertations, magazines, newspapers, speeches, and other publications are very good resources for the literatures. In development of idea and presentation of facts, the importance of the study has to be stated, specifying the beneficiaries of the research. We must include in the background the significance of the study. If it is significant, therefore there are people who will be benefiting. Usually, we must be answering what, who, and how. What will be their benefit? Who will be benefiting? And how they will be benefiting from the study. In every paragraph, the research should be able to identify who will benefit for the work, how each of them will benefit from it. Take note, however, that there are no side headings used for the importance of the study, objectives, and review of the literature. All these are interpreted into the discussion and presentation of the background of the study. Indention should always be 5 spaces. The first character of the first word should be typed on the 6th space. Next, we have the statement of the problem. These are the types, there are 3 types of heading for the statement of problem, or the SOP. They are the center heading, side heading, and the paragraph heading. That is for the format of our SOP. The main problem is presented first in one paragraph using a declarative sentence, and that is the title, which will be written in a paragraph and declarative sentence. That's the main problem. This is followed by the specific problems with the introductory sentence and numbered. All specific research problems are in interrogative sentence. Class, or the main problem is our title will be written, and the specific problems are the SOP, or the statement of the problem. Now, all research hypothesis is presented corresponding to its research problem. Only specific problems, or the SOP, shall have their respective hypothesis. Usually, each specific or each SOP has its own hypothesis. Hypothesis, which is the educated guess, for each research problem shall state an answer to each of the SOP. At times, depending on the nature of the research work, a hypothesis may not be applicable. Take note that there is no null hypothesis in this part of the research. All null hypotheses are placed in chapter 2 under the treatment of data. Let's have the example of the research hypothesis. The main aim of the study is to find out whether or not a significant correlation exists between the values and teaching style of faculty members of the College of Criminal Justice Education in Angeles City. Specifically, which will be our SOP, it shall seek to answer the following questions. Number 1, what are the most prepared and most practiced instrumental and terminal valued for the respondents? A, to what extent do the instrumental values determine the terminal values? B, how do the instrumental and terminal values of the corresponding significantly vary according to the moderating variables of gender, age, educational attainment, number of years in teaching experience, teaching status, teaching classifications, and subject assignment. What is the hypothesis for that? The most prepared and most practiced instrumental value is being loving, while the terminal value is salvation. A, instrumental value determine the terminal value to gender extent. B, instrumental values significantly vary according to the moderating variables of gender, age, educational attainment, number of years of teaching experience, teaching status, teaching classification, and subject assignment. If you will see in the example given, each SOP has its own hypothesis. Even the sub-statement of the SOP are also given hypothesis. Number 2, SOP. What teaching style is prepared by the respondent? A, how do their teaching style significantly vary according to the moderating variables? What is the hypothesis of that? The humanist orientation's teaching style is prepared by the respondent. A, which is the hypothesis for the letter A of the SOP. The respondent's teaching style significantly vary according to the moderating variables. Number 3, what is the level of correlation between A, moderating variables and respondents' instrumental and terminal values and teaching style? Hypothesis. There is a high positive correlation between A, moderating variables under and respondents' instrumental and terminal values, and B, instrumental and terminal values and teaching styles. So those are the example. Disclaimer, this is not my study. This is an example given by my book reference in this lesson. Theoretical or the conceptual framework. So by this, we can know that we are using theory and we are also using concept as our framework to guide us or to serve as the blueprint for our study. This portion of the paper has to follow or reflect the thematic organization or approach of all theories supporting the research studies. In here, class, we are using the different theories which are supporting our studies so that we can already have guide and we can have the thematic organization. As described, the theoretical framework is logical and systematic presentations of the theories relevant to each of the research problem are discussed. Remember, we already have the main problem, the title, and we already have the SOP. If your SOP were answered or were supported or were guided by certain theories, therefore you can state all the theories that can guide or that can serve as your system logic presentation of your problem. It is advisable to use center and side headings or even paragraphs heading whenever necessary. This portion is very important of the research. Now, in addition to the theories, concepts have to be presented as well. It is at this portion of the paper that terms used will be to be defined. The definition of terms becomes part of the entire theoretical framework. As a term is mentioned, it has to be defined in its operational meaning. Note that there is no side heading for definition of terms. The terms are incorporated in the discussion of the theories being used. So we can see that there are important terms that are being defined, so we can find them under the theoretical framework. Remember, the definition must be in their operational meaning. Now we have the design and the methodology. Write an introductory sentence for this chapter. Research design and methodology. State and explain the research method used. Now, this is the pattern. After you wrote the research method that was employed in the study, you also must discuss the why it was chosen. Be specific about the research method, whether it is descriptive, experimental, or historical. Usually, under the criminological research, we are using the descriptive method. Therefore, define the descriptive method and then you discuss why it was chosen. Mention also the approaches used in the study. For instance, if the descriptive method is used, state whether the study adopted survey, correlational, case study, evaluative comparative, content analysis, or normative survey. The narrative description should mention what research method is all about and how the variables are reflected using such research method. Therefore, it must be specific in this area. So, under the descriptive which will be employed, you also should mention what descriptive method is used as mentioned in the second paragraph. Now we move to the population and the locale of the study. Give a narrative presentation to include the population of the study as well as the sample population. If sampling is determined, describe the respondents as to the profile vis-a-vis information contained in the research. Include the sampling technique used in the research. Include the sampling technique used in the choice of the respondent. Show the formula used indicative of the population and the sample size. So the population class it can be people, things, places wherein the study will be conducted or to whom the study will be conducted. Now the population are your out of population, you can have the sample. The sample will serve as the representation or a portion of your entire population. If you will be using a sample, therefore, you should mention or describe what sampling technique did you use. Define that technique, what it is, and discuss how it was used or why you have chosen that. Therefore, if you have chosen that, if there are formula, you should also indicate the formula on how did you get the sample out of the entire population. In the narrative description of the respondents, specify the reason that they were chosen. Whether possible, a tabular presentation of the respondents' characteristics may be done after its textual explanation. So the reason why that sample was specifically chosen should be reflected also in the paper. Now, the data gathering tool. Ito ang pinakagamit natin on how we can gather your data so that we can have this, we can discuss properly and we can come up with the result. Now, we can gather them by using instrument. The description is focused on the kind of items in the instrument, how items are answered, and how it was constructed. Be very careful on the basis or the basis of the items of the instrument. Be it a questionnaire, observation guide, an interview schedule, the validation process is very important here. Why? Be explained thoroughly. Whenever applicable, it is worth mentioning the instrument's reliability and the validity. Of course, depending on the study, what kind of instrument or tool you will be using. Now, if you have identified the proper instrument or the tool that you will be needing, you should also discuss in your paper what kind of reliability and validity coefficient and the type of validity and reliability used in the study. In the case, the data gathering instrument was not constructed, but it is a reality-made tool like a rating scale or a psychological test. It is still necessary to mention its reliability and validity level and the process undertaken by the author. Proper citation about the author is expected. Now, why we need to do that? We are making it sure that the instrument used is reliable and valid. How? It was tested by the if you have adopted it, of course, the owner of the instrument did some processes to assure its reliability and validity. So you must discuss that, but with proper citation. Now, the data gathering procedure. Give a narrative description on the steps undertaken in data gathering. The discussion should include the specifics of the procedures of the entire research process. Remember, a scientific research is a systematic research. Therefore, how you gather the procedure in gathering the data should be systematic. Then you need to discuss the procedure of the entire research process. Now, the data that was gathered must undergo in the treatment of data. For qualitative research, all statistical tools have to be presented, including how these were used in their formulae. Hand in hand with the statistical tools are the corresponding null hypotheses, if this were the basis in the analysis of the findings. An introductory sentence of the chapter is made before the explanation on the treatment of data. Now, an example of statistical tool is found below. We have ANOVA, or the analysis of variance. This was used to test the null hypothesis, which states that there is no significant correlation, and the formula is the following: TSS equals EX2 and open and close parentheses EX over N. N is appearing below, where these are the equivalent of those formula. All scales of measure of research variables have to be placed under this part of the manuscript. The scales must also be appearing, including their interpretations or their equivalents. Now let's have a walkthrough concerning the descriptive research. According to Yin 2003, descriptive research describes what is. So if you want to know a phenomena, descriptive method is the best research method. It is involved in the description, recording, analysis, and interpretation of the present nature. Composition of the process of phenomena. The focus is on the prevailing condition, or showing a person, group, or thing behaves or functions in the present. It often involves some types of comparison or contrast. If you will see the definition class, you will be convinced that most of the criminological research will always fall under the descriptive research. Why? We always want to describe a phenomena. Why crime happened? We want to record the crime rate, the situation, and by recording them, we are analyzing the data, the responses, and of course, by analyzing them, we are interpreting the present nature. Then, to add, it is also a fact-finding with adequate interpretation. So it is more of the investigation of a phenomena. This method is something more and beyond just data gathering. The latter is not reflective thinking nor research. The true meaning of the data collected should be reported from the point of view of the objective and the basic assumption of the project underway. Now, this follows logical and careful classification of data. Facts obtained may be accurate expressions of central tendency or deviation or of correlation, but the report is not research unless discussion or of those data is not carried up to the thinking process in terms of ordered reasoning. So this research method also describes and interprets what is. That's the concern of the descriptive research. It concerns with the condition of relationships that exist, practice that prevails, beliefs, processes that are going on, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's why in this not just we are not just describing what is in the descriptive research, but by that also we can have the comparison, the contrast involving the measurement, classification, interpretation, and the evaluation. Now, under the research method or the descriptive research, we have the different techniques or methods in this research. First is the survey. Survey, otherwise known as the normative survey, is a fact-finding study with adequate and accurate interpretation. It is used to collect demographic data about people's behavior, their practices, their intentions, their beliefs, attitudes, their opinion, their judgment, interests, perceptions, and so on and so forth. By gathering those perceptions or those data, we can now analyze, organize, and then interpret. So that's how survey are being used under the descriptive method. We also have the case study is a comprehensive, complete, detailed, and in-depth study and analysis of an individual, institution, or community. If you want to know the problem, the setting, and you can make a comprehensive, complete study of a certain police station, the jail, the correction facility, or the fire station. Case study is ideal to use in those agencies. Content analysis is a research technique for the objective, systematic, and quantitative description of the manifest content of communication. So you want to analyze a certain object, a certain work, no? That's good. That must be used, or it is the ideal method to be used. Types of survey technique or the approach. Total population survey, if you will be including the entire population in the survey. The latest survey on crime rate in the Philippines is an example. Also, sample survey. If you will just get a portion of the population, that is sample survey. Example, a cluster or a portion out of the total population will be survey on a certain issue or issues. Social survey. The investigator researches on the attitudes and behaviors of different groups of people with crime incidents. Example, survey of different groups or level of people like the rich, the middle, and the poor pertaining the issue. Ano ba yung kanilang attitude or behavior tungkol sa criminality? Titignan natin ano ang pananaw ng mayaman, ng mga middle class, or ng mga mahihirap. School survey. This is used to gather data for and about schools and to assess educational achievement and the education itself. No? Example, survey by means of inspection conducted by the CHED, the PRC board examiner, to different CHED accredited criminology colleges and universities to determine if the colleges and universities are producing professionals. So that is school survey. They are investigating, or they are studying, no, if the schools as a quality education are offering what is required by the law for them to produce professionals. Public opinion survey. This is used to gauge the reactions of people towards certain commission of crime issues or persons. Survey conducted through television or radio. The respondent text or call to give their opinion on certain issues. So that means everyone can participate in the survey. Poll survey. This is a survey in which the respondents are asked if they are voting for a certain candidate in an election. This is conducted usually by the SWS, Haribon, and other agencies. before the election, so that we can know who are the leading, no, who are the what are the preference of the public among the candidates. The market survey. This is aimed to find out what kind of people purchase which product and how packaging, advertising, and displaying affect buying prices and so on. So mostly market surveys are concerned about products and about the consumers. Evaluation survey, the researcher look back to see what has been accomplished and with a critical eye evaluates the result whether they are satisfactory or not with the end of view of making improvement. Example, you conducted a seminar and you will conduct a survey among the participants if the what are the strengths and weaknesses of the event of the seminar, so that the end we can improve the next time we conduct it again. Comparative survey, the result from two different groups, techniques, or procedures are compared. Comparison between the new and old administration, and so on and so forth. Short-term survey. Usually, the data collected are over the period of weeks, months, or even years, but the period should be less than 5 years. Those surveys are called short-term. But when it comes for the long-term survey, usually more than 5 years conducted resurveys, and those data will be examined. Longitudinal survey, this is almost the same as the long-term survey. The data collected in the past will be compared with the present data. Conduct a survey regarding the crime rate and compare it in the past 5 to 6 years. Now, the cross-sectional survey. In this type of survey, several groups in various stages of involvement are studied simultaneously. Sabay-sabay na ini-study ang iba't ibang mga grupo at iba't ibang mga stage ng kanilang mga involvement. Conduct a simultaneous survey regarding the culture and belief of Ilocanos, Cebuanos, and Tausug. After the survey, determine the similarity of their culture and their belief. That's the example. Job analysis survey. This provides information on the general duties and responsibilities of workers, their education, training, experience, salaries, type of knowledge and skills, and other that helps administrators or managers in setting up training programs and recruitment policies. Usually, ginagawa ito ng mga naka-assign sa Human Resource Department. Community survey. This survey provides information on the various aspects of the community. Example, in order to have a viable data, the researcher conduct a community survey personally by staying on living in a certain community to know their background, specifically beliefs, traditions, source of income, education, family population, social problems, and so on and so forth. Ibig sabihin, more on immersion in the community so that you can know, you can gather data and you can know the different aspects of that community. And then we have the correlation study. This study, this is a survey that shows the relationship between two or more variables. That is how a variable varies with one another. An examinee in criminology licensure examination is expected that if he gets a passing rate in law enforcement administration, it assumes that he or she will get passing grades in all the subjects and eventually pass the board examination. So that's the example of the correlation survey. So in data gathering, we need instrument. The following are the most common instrument used in the data gathering. First, the interview. All people who may be able to shed light on the problem are interviewed. By that, you can use the interview as your instrument. Number two, observation. Involves observing the patient's behavior for an adequate length of time. We also use questionnaire to give the patient himself or the participant himself or the respondent himself to some people who be able to contribute something to the discovery of important data about the case. We also use psychological tests administered to the patient for information about his problem. Anecdotal records, records of significant aspects of the patient's behavior. Autobiographies, rich resources, information about the patient and his problem. And also, we are using other devices like checklists, scorecards, and rating scales. Now, we have a common steps in content analysis. Another way is first recognize the problem. So all research are starting with a problem. Of course, if you recognize a problem, now you can form your hypothesis. You can give your educated guess, wise guess. Now, after that, you can do library research. You can look for literatures, supports. Now you can design your study and then developing the study. Then collecting the data. After collecting the data, you can analyze your data, then make a conclusion, and by your conclusion, you can make your recommendation. Survey research. An attempt to obtain data from member of a population or a sample out of the population to determine the current status of the population with respect to one or more variables. It involves researchers asking a large group of people questions about a particular topic or issue. So that's the survey research. Types of survey, we discussed already: cross-sectional survey, longitudinal survey, trends, cohorts, panel studies. And now the steps in the survey research. First, define, or the problem must be defined. After you have defined the problem, you must identify your target population. Then, the mode of data collection. Direct administering to a group. You can mail the survey, telephone survey, personal survey, selection of the sample, then preparation of the instrument. We have two questionnaire, closed-ended questionnaire, and the open-ended questionnaire. Ibig sabihin sa open-ended, makakapagbigay ka pa ng sagot mo or statement mo. Then we can have the pre-testing questionnaire and then prepare of the cover letter. Now we have sampling strategies. First, sampling means selecting a given number of person, objects, or events called subset from a given population. Ibig sabihin, a portion or a subset ng buong population mo, ang tawag doon ay sampling, also called the subgroup ng larger population natin. It may be defined as a measuring a small portion of something and then making a general statement. Buong population, kukuha ka ng subset, ng portion, yung nakuha mo sa kanilang data, you can make a general statement out of the result gathered from your sample. Bakit mahalaga ang sampling? Siyempre, it is para technique ito para naman mapadali ang research, no? Pwede kang maka-save ng time, resources, tsaka ng lahat ng pwede ma-save mo dito because imagine mo, you can have a sample out of the whole population but the result can be generalized. That's a good and wise move. Advantage of sampling. Sampling makes possible the study of the large heterogeneous population. Malaki na, malawak pa, or yung iba-iba pa yung population pwede mong masakop. Sampling is economy, no? Mas nakakatipid. Sampling is for speed. Sampling is also for accuracy. And then, sampling saves the resources of the data. Disadvantage ka lang ng sampling. If sampling is biased or not representative or too small, the conclusion may not be valid or unreliable. If research and respondents to study the sample must have a common characteristics, which is the basis of the study. No? If the population is very large and there are many sections and subsections, the sampling procedure becomes very complicated. If the researcher does not possess the necessary skill and technique, how in sample procedure, the sampling may become biased and unrepresentative. You have two sampling type, probability and non-probability. Probability, there is a proportion, a certain percent of the population, and such sample is selected from the population by means of some every element of the population has a chance of being included in the sample. Also, if there is a system used in selecting a sample, that is probability sample or sampling. Non-probability, on the other hand, the sample is not proportion of the population and there is no system in selecting the sample. The selection is depend upon the situation. So under the sampling of probability sampling, we have the pure random sampling. This type is one in which everyone in the population of the inquiry has an equal chance, that's the key word, of being selected or to be included in the sample. While systematic, it is the technique of the sample in which every nth, example, every fifth, every five, and in the list of names will be selected, every third number. That's some techniques that we can use in systematic. Stratified sampling is the process of selecting randomly samples from different strata of the population used in the study. Random, but within the different strata of the population used in the study. Purposive sampling is determining the targeted population, those to be involved in the study. And then we have the clustering sampling or multi-stage cluster sampling is used when there is so big or geographical area of the research is so large. Paghati-hatiin mo, gamitin mo yung mga regions na division and so on and so forth. While for the non-probability sampling, accidental sampling is one, there is no system or selection, but only those whom the researcher or interviewer meet by chance, include sa nakakasalubong mo, sino may nakasalamuha mo, yan, pwede mo silang gawing sample, no? Quota sampling, a specific number of person of certain types are in the sample. Halimbawa, kapag naka 100 ka, okay na yung study mo. That's a quota sampling. Convenience sampling is a process of picking out people in the most convenient and immediate get the reaction to a certain hot and controversial issue. Convenience, lahat ng pwede, basta pinaka-convenient mong makuha ang kanyang side, yung kanyang reaction sa isang controversial issue. Steps in computing the size of a sample. We can determine the size of the sample population. This is easily determined from the scope and the limitations of the study. Decide on the margin of error. Usually, class, we can have the 5%, but probably 3% margin of error is the most ideal, or it is an ideal number. Then use the formula. Again, in using formula, you must state what formula did you use, how did you use them, and state the process of how you get that sample from the population. Example is this. If the sampling is multi-stage or if the population is stratified, compute the sample portion or the percent. Then find the sample from each final sampling stratum. Ibig sabihin, kung iba't iba yung strata ng iyong mga population, then each strata, kunin mo yung kanilang percentage and then saka mo kunin yung sample doon. Multiply the number of the sampling unit in each final sampling stratum by rate or percent to find the sample from each final sampling stratum. Kasi nga iba-iba ang population o number ng per stratum. Kunwari, iba-iba ang number ng pulis kada region. syempre hindi lang pwedeng pare-pareho number ang kukunin mo. So get the percentage para makuha mo din yung tamang sample kada region o kada stratum o strata. Add the sample from all the final strata to find the total sample out of the population. Sampling is the process of choosing a representative part of the population under the typical or representative of the population means that a part of the population is chosen in such a manner that the characteristics and variables or variations are reflected. It is therefore not just taking any part, but rather that which is representative of the entire population. In short, sample is the representation of the entire population or the representative of the entire population. Okay, that's all for the topic, criminological research. It was discussed para kahit paano the part, especially yung portion ng proposal at lalo na yung iba't ibang mahalagang definition at paggamit lalo na sa ating mga methodology ng study and how we treat our data. Of course, if we have a data na na-analyze na, and then we can report the data. In reporting the data, nag-appear yung mga tables, yung mga figures natin. Gagawin mo lang, ang nakalagay sa yung table, interpret mo lang into words, and then ano yung implication niya, ano ang sinasabi ng data mo, and then i-collaborate mo lang. Ano yung mga studies na sumusuporta or baka naman hindi sumusuporta sa yung naging implication. And then after that, that's the time you can summarize your discussed o yung discussion mo na galing sa yung resulta ng mga data gathered. After mo yung ma-summarize, you can now make a conclusion based doon sa lumabas sa findings mo. And then the conclusions is your basis in giving your recommendation. Remember, we have a research because there is a problem. If the problem was found, then we have investigated it, we conclude, and then we know the problem. Therefore, we must recommend solution. Now, in your recommendation, it must be answering what is your recommendation, who is involved in your recommendation, how it must be done. Sapagkat pag-research ay hindi nagbe-benefit or hindi nagpapagaan ng buhay ng tao, wala itong kwentang research. Usually, dapat may pakinabang ang bawat research natin sapagkat that's the reason why we conducted a research from the very start. Thank you very much. God bless you. To God be the glory, and Jesus saves.